It was a cold and gloomy winter night, where darkness spread to every corner of the sleeping city. A thin layer of snow covered the ground, transforming the urban landscape into an almost desolate landscape. On the edge of town, at the end of an abandoned road, stood an imposing structure that had long been forgotten by the modern world: the old tannery. The tannery, a colossal building of brick and steel, appeared to have been suddenly abandoned. Its broken windows and rusty doors were testament to the relentless weather that had turned the place into a monument to abandonment. The factory had once been the beating heart of the city's economy, but now it lay silent and empty, its machinery rusting and corridors abandoned. A group of 4 friends, Lisa, David, Sarah, and Mark, decided to challenge the legend that haunted the town. The tannery was haunted. Stories of shadowy apparitions and unexplained noises had spread over the years, turning the factory into a landmark for thrill seekers. That night, the group of friends, driven by a curiosity that overcame fear, were determined to explore the mysterious location. With tactical flashlights in hand, heavy coats and scarves to protect themselves from the biting cold, they were ready to face the unknown. Passing through the factory's main entrance, a rusty door that creaked like a ghostly scream, they were plunged into darkness. The air inside the factory was freezing, and the echo of their footsteps resonated off the brick walls as if the building was whispering long-forgotten secrets. The darkness that enveloped them was almost tangible, and the feeling that they were being watched grew with each step they took. The factory seemed frozen in time, with rusting machines, empty corridors, and an oppressive atmosphere. As the group ventured deeper into the factory, they began to hear strange, indistinct noises. Sometimes they sounded like distant voices, like barely audible whispers. At other times, the sounds turned into chilling laughter that echoed through the dark corridors. Sarah, the most sensitive of the group, began to feel an unsettling presence. She told her friends that she thought they were not alone in the factory, that something or someone was watching them. David, the skeptic of the group, tried to calm her down, attributing the mysterious sounds to drafts and echoes. But as they explored further, they came to a large production hall. In this vast and abandoned space, the tanning machines remained motionless, silent witnesses of the past. It was there that they heard something that made them freeze in fear, a strange noise coming from a dark corner. A shadow moved quickly, like a fleeting blur, before disappearing into the darkness. Lisa murmured, "Did you guys see that?" The friends' eyes were wide, and the air grew heavier as the feeling that they were not alone in the factory grew. The group of friends, transfixed by the fleeting glimpse of the shadow in the dark corner, tried to compose themselves. Mark was the first to break the tense silence, saying in a shaky whisper, "What the hell was that?" Nobody had an answer. They felt like intruders in an unknown and sinister world, a feeling that grew as the silence of the abandoned factory was filled with strange noises. The whispering sounds they had heard earlier intensified. Sometimes they sounded like voices whispering unintelligible words. At other times, they turned into low, chilling laughter that echoed through the empty hallways. Sarah, the most sensitive of the group, began to feel an unsettling presence more clearly. She spoke in a low voice. "Don't you feel it? Something isn't right here." She was right. David, the skeptic, tried to keep the group together. He suggested they continue exploring and find a logical explanation for what they were experiencing. But his words weren't enough to calm everyone's nerves. As they continued to explore the factory, they came to a large production hall where the tanning machines stood silently, like silent guardians of a dark past. In this vast space, the darkness was almost suffocating. It was then that the friends heard a sound that made their hearts freeze: low, sinister laughter, as if something was having fun at their expense. Laughter echoed around the room, but the source remained invisible. Jessica, the bravest of the group, decided to speak up. "Maybe we're being tricked by someone, a bad joke." His friends nodded with relief, wishing that was the correct explanation. So they decided to investigate the source of the laughter and found a dark corner where it seemed to have originated. Their flashlights illuminated the area, but there was no one there. The tension grew as the feeling that something was wrong didn't leave them. As the group explored deeper into the factory, the whispers and laughter continued, becoming more insistent. They seemed to surround them from all sides, as if the factory itself were alive. reacting to the intrusive presence of their friends. Mark tried to remain calm, but his voice betrayed his apprehension as he said, "This isn't right. Let's get out of here." Reluctantly, the friends agreed and headed towards the exit, but the darkness had other plans for them. As they approached the exit, their flashlights began to flicker, as if their power was being drained. The darkness was coming to life, and the feeling of being watched was almost unbearable. However, they did not know that the real ordeal was yet to come. As the group of friends approached the factory exit, the tension in the air was palpable. Their flashlights, which had been their only source of light and safety, began to flicker erratically, casting grotesque shadows on the dark walls. Each step towards the exit seemed endless, and the feeling that something evil was watching them intensified. Sarah, whose intuition had always served her well, was beginning to sense an unsettling presence lurking in the shadows. She told her friends in a trembling whisper, "We're not alone here. Something haunts us." David, the skeptic of the group, tried to dismiss Sarah's words as a result of fear and oppressive darkness. He suggested that the electricity at the factory might be erratic, explaining the lantern's strange behavior. However, the feeling that something sinister was watching them continued to grow. The friends felt trapped in that nightmare, while indistinct whispers and chilling laughter seemed to surround them from all sides. It was as if the factory itself was reacting to the intrusive presence. The friends made a hasty decision. They would return to the large production hall, where they had previously encountered the shadow. The idea was to take refuge in a larger, well-lit place, in the hope that the threat would leave them alone. As they returned to the hall, the darkness of the factory seemed to close in on them, and the whispering noises intensified. They sounded like unintelligible words and distant voices that echoed like laments. The tension in the group was almost unbearable, and everyone yearned for an explanation for the nightmare they were experiencing. The great production hall was empty, with the tanning machines standing like silent sentinels from the dark past. They turned on their flashlights, and the brightly lit environment brought some temporary comfort. But the relief was short-lived. As they discussed what to do next, they heard again the ominous sound they'd encountered earlier, chilling laughter that echoed throughout the hall. The laughter seemed to originate from somewhere nearby, but there was no one visible. Jessica, whose courage was legendary among her friends, decided to face the source of the laughter. She approached a dark corner where they seemed to have originated, while her friends watched her with a mixture of apprehension and expectation. His flashlight illuminated the dark corner, but there was no one there. The feeling that something was wrong continued to dominate the environment, as if the factory itself was alive and conspiring against them. "We can't stay here indefinitely," Mark said, eager to find a way out of the nightmare that engulfed them. They decided it was time to face the truth, even if it meant finding the source of the sinister laughter. With a sense of determination, the group began exploring the factory once again, as laughter echoed in their ears and shadows danced on the walls. The truth they were about to discover was more terrible than any of them could imagine. As the group of friends continued to explore the factory, sinister laughter echoed throughout, as if they were being chased by an unseen presence. The tension in the air was almost palpable, and the feeling that something evil was lurking became unbearable. Mark tried to remain calm, but his gaze was fixed on the shadows dancing on the walls, as if the darkness itself were alive. "This isn't right. Let's get out of here," he said urgently. His friends agreed, relieved at the idea of escaping this nightmare. They headed towards the factory exit, but the darkness had other plans for them. As they approached the exit, their flashlights began to flicker erratically, as if the power was being sucked out. The darkness seemed to come to life, and the feeling of being watched intensified. The friends felt like the factory was closing in on them, as if the brick walls were moving, squeezing them tighter and tighter. The feeling that something evil was chasing them was undeniable. Sarah tried to remain calm and suggested they look for an alternative way out. With flashlights flickering and darkness closing in around them, they ventured deeper into the factory in search of an escape route. The group of friends had no idea that the real ordeal was yet to come. The tannery hid a dark secret that they were about to discover. As they explored dark corridors and abandoned rooms, the whispers and laughter continued, becoming more insistent. They sounded like unintelligible words, as if they were trying to communicate with the intruders, and the friends felt that they were not alone in the factory. Suddenly, a rusty door opened with a loud creak. In front of him, a hidden room was revealed, full of dusty documents and ancient objects. The friends entered the room, hoping to find clues that would lead them to a way out. In the center of the room, they saw a pile of yellow documents, which appeared to belong to factory workers. Jessica, the most curious of the group, began to examine them. The documents detailed appalling working conditions, abuse, and neglect by the factory owners. As they leafed through the documents, the friends discovered a dark story that had been buried in the dusty pages. There were reports of a fire that had broken out at the factory decades ago, causing the deaths of many workers. The tannery had been a place of abuse and exploitation, where workers were subjected to inhumane conditions. The fire that had consumed the factory and claimed innocent lives had been caused by the negligence of the owners, who had only been concerned with profit. The friends were horrified to discover the terrible truth about the factory. It was as if the souls of the dead workers still roamed the halls, seeking justice and revenge. Among the documents, Mark found an old photograph that showed a group of workers, their faces tired and suffering. As they looked at the photo, the sinister laughter echoed in the room again, closer than ever. It was then that they realized the terrifying truth. The laughter was not coming from an unseen source, but rather from the dead workers who still haunted the factory. They were trying to communicate, demanding justice for the atrocities they had suffered. The friends understood that the factory was haunted by the tormented souls of the dead workers, and they were the intruders in their search for redemption. Sarah, the most sensitive of the group, asked them to kneel as a sign of respect for the spirits. She felt the workers needed help finding peace. Together, in an impromptu ceremony, they promised to honor the memory of the workers and seek justice in their name.